The legislation meeting will now come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Kennedy.
Here.
Alderman Conway.
Present.
Alderman Boyd. Alderman Honowitz. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Howard.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderman Ogilvy. Alderwoman Navarro.
Present.
Chairman Vaccaro.
Present.
President Reed.
Here.
7 present. You have a quorum.
Okay, we're here to discuss Resolution 124. The sponsor, as well as the Sahara group that's here, have asked not to vote this out tonight because they want to have one more meeting with more public input. Well, here's our Vice Chair, Scott, and he brought an extra Vice Chair. So we're going to recognize President Reed, and we'll get this kicked off. And there will not be a vote tonight because what I believe will be November 1st will be when we actually vote on this.
All right, perfect. I want to just, before I begin, thank all the members of the committee and people from throughout the city and the Sierra Club for coming out tonight to let their voices be heard on such an important issue. This resolution, Resolution 124, is a resolution that will begin the process of getting St. Louis City ready for 100. We have a number of speakers here with us tonight, some folks that are very versed in this field of renewable energy, and I think St. Louis City, we are indeed blessed and lucky to have the talent within the Sierra Club and within the city of St. Louis to help us through this process and also begin to help St. Louis be ready for 100. For me, what this is about turning America over and our city and our state and our nation over in a better place than what we received it. I think the jury is out in terms of the impact that fossil fuels have on our environment, and we can do better. We can do better, but it has to be in incremental steps, and we need to start now. I'm waiting for them to get ready, but we're going to have, are you getting close? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Awesome. So, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I would like to start with Sarah Edgar and Andy Knott from the Sierra Club, and then we'll go down the list from there.
That's fine. And I want to apologize to everybody about the parking situation tonight. I will take the blame. We tried to set this up on a night with no baseball, no hockey. Did not anticipate that there would be a concert, and so everybody had to pay $10. So not only did you give of your time, thank you for the $10. And we're going to fix that next time. This is my first time really chairing a meeting, so I'm new at this, so I'm learning myself as we go along.
And I also want to thank the members and also you, Mr. Chairman, for having this meeting in the evening instead of 10 o'clock throughout the day. Gives everybody an opportunity to show up and talk.
Well, thank you so much to the committee for hearing this resolution, and in particular, thank you to President Louis Reed for sponsoring this. Thank you to the Sustainability Office and Catherine Werner for all of your work in the city of St. Louis on climate. Thank you to our co-sponsors as well, Alderman Vaccaro and Alderman Navarro. And I want to thank all of the alder people who've been helping with this effort and everyone in the room who came out to hear this important issue. So I'm going to be turning this over to our speakers that we'll introduce you to very shortly. But our hope is that tonight we will be able to demonstrate through our various different speakers that this is an opportunity for St. Louis to lead. This is an opportunity for us to create jobs, to help our residents, to help our city save money by transitioning to cheaper, cleaner energy. It's a chance for us to clean up our air and our water and to improve public health outcomes in our city. And we think this is an opportunity for us to address climate change and to bring new businesses to our region by investing in clean energy that is attractive to the business community. And we think this is an opportunity for us to continue the great work that the City of St. Louis has been doing over the last few years. And so we recognize a lot of work has been done in the City of St. Louis, the sustainability plan and the greenhouse gas inventory that was done, the climate action plan, the work at the Board of Aldermen to support the Paris Accord, as well as Mayor Lyda Krewson, energy efficiency benchmarking, as well as PACE and energy efficiency lighting programs. And we know that there's a lot more that could be on this list. We recognize there's a lot of great work that's been done in the City of St. Louis, and we think this is the great next step to take. And before we get started, I just want to really show that this is something that the nation as a whole is moving in this direction. There are over 40 U.S. cities that have already made commitments to transition to 100% clean energy. Might be a little bit difficult to see on that slide. We can always send out slides later. But what that is showing is all of the different cities across the U.S., large and small, that have made commitments of some form. Some are already at 100% clean energy. So this is something that is possible. It's doable. It's really just having the political will to move in that direction. And finally, before I turn it over to my colleague, Andy Knott, I just want to say that this is something that, researchers around the world, a number of academics have been looking at. How can we do this? And there's a lot of different research out there that looks at how can we bring on more wind and solar, how can we invest in energy efficiency programs to reduce how much energy we need. And so there's a lot of research, there's a lot of resources out there that say this is completely possible and doable. We just have to start taking the steps to move in that direction. So I'm going to turn it over to Andy. I'm going to do slides for him.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, and thank you, President Reed, Chairman Vaccaro, and all the members of the committee. I'm Andy Knott. I'm also with the Sierra Club. Just to briefly finish up our introductory slides, these are businesses in St. Louis that are members of a coalition of industry called RE100, or Renewable Energy 100. And these are all companies, again, just here in St. Louis. There are hundreds around the country, but these have a presence in St. Louis and have made a commitment to going to 100% clean energy. I should mention that other major companies like Google and Microsoft, they make decisions on where they bring their new facilities based upon where they can get 100% clean energy. There's been a lot of talk about Amazon lately. Amazon also has a goal of getting to 100% clean energy. This is just a quick list of where other cities in Missouri are in terms of wind and solar capacity, and some of these have municipal utilities, some of them don't, where they have a company like Kansas City Power and Light or Ameren. But Rockport, Missouri, small town, about 1,700 people. It was actually the first in the nation to go to 100% wind energy. It's north of Kansas City. Kansas City with KCP&L is about 22% wind and solar. Springfield, Missouri, about 20%. Independence, 10%. Columbia, 6%. And St. Louis with Ameren has been at 1%. However, they just released, this has been in the news lately, and it's good news. They are going to purchase 700 megawatts of wind by 2020, purchase or build. So they'll move up to 8%. So this is a very positive step in the right direction here locally. So we have 5 speakers, not exactly in this order, but Reverend Roderick Burton with New Northside Missionary Baptist Church. Chad Laurent, we'll be dialing him in by phone. He's a consultant who does a lot of work around the country on these issues, including with the Department of Energy. Emily Andrews is here with the U.S. Green Building Council. We'll be dialing in Dr. William Kincaid, who is a medical doctor, to talk about health effects of air pollution from fossil fuels. And then Erin Noble is here with the Missouri Solar Energy Industry Association, as well as her company, Straight Up Solar. So with that, I think we're going to dial in Chad Laurent next. He's out on the East Coast, so we want to get him. Oh, I'm sorry. I should also mention, sorry, on hand tonight, in case there are any questions, we have Maxine Lapellis, who is the director of the Interdisciplinary Environmental Clinic at Washington University, an expert on local air pollution issues. And also just one person who was unable to attend tonight was Dr. Peter Raven, President Emeritus of the Missouri Botanical Gardens. He had hoped to be here, could not due to a health issue. So with that, I think one last thing. Oh, sorry. We want to thank other organizations that have participated in the planning around this resolution, and it looks like we just lost it. Let's see. I know 350 STL. I think there's some folks here from that group tonight. We have Missouri Interfaith Power and Light, Organizing for Action, Missouri Coalition for the Environment, Renew Missouri, League of Women Voters, Climate Reality, Show Me 15, the Asthma and Allergy Foundation, and Renovate America. And there's many more. These are just the subset of the folks who've been involved in the planning and showing interest in this resolution. So, is that it, Sarah? Do you want to dial in Chad? I got his number.
Cheerios or some checks? We're gonna share it. Pass it down. I catch myself like.
Hi, this is Chad.
Hey, Chad, it's Andy Knott. I'm going to put you, you're on speakerphone in the committee room.
Okay.
Can people hear Chad okay?
Can you hear me okay?
Okay, I should just introduce Chad. Chad is the Vice President and General Counsel for Meister Consultant Groups in Boston. He specializes in renewable energy, law and policy, sustainable business strategies, renewable energy project development, and procurement. Okay, Chad, we're going to turn it over to you. We've got your first slide up on the screen.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. I've done a lot of work recently with cities that are pursuing 100% renewable energy goals, climate neutral goals, and we recently wrote a report called Pathways to 100, which helps cities sort of explore the ecosystem that they operate in when they're looking to move towards 100%. And so one of the first steps really in that process is to map the city's energy landscape. You're going to want to coordinate closely with your utility, who provides you with the electricity service both to the municipalities, operations, as well as residents. And the different pathways and policies that you can enact will depend on the type of utility you have, obviously, and the types of policies that are available given sort of the state regulatory context and also the utilities operations. So whether it's investor-owned or municipal utility, whether there's a renewable portfolio standard, whether third-party ownership is allowed, community choice aggregation. These are all different types of policies that can enable more renewable energy to be brought online or make it slightly more challenging. So in terms of the next slide that I prepared in terms of what are the steps that a city can take to get towards 100%, and really the 100% goal will take time. It's not something that can happen overnight or probably even within a year or two, but it helps to sort of frame decisions that cities are making in terms of planning and zoning and permitting, and also different policies that, a city can ask, are these helping us get to 100% renewable? Are they helping us get to our goal or not? And so it's a useful way of sort of framing policy decisions within a municipality. And then in terms of available strategies, depending on the scope of the 100% goal, there's consumer-oriented strategies. So how do cities enable residents and businesses to procure renewable energy and generate their own electricity on site. And most of those can be implemented regardless of the type of utility. And cities have a surprising amount of control over things like zoning and permitting, and those costs can add up and contribute to the cost of renewable energy systems, whether it's solar hot water or solar electricity or air source heat pumps or electric vehicle charging stations. Those different types of technologies that folks will want to deploy in their homes or businesses, the cities can play a role in making it easier for those folks to implement those technologies and by reducing costs. Then there's strategies that involve targeting municipal operations. So how can the city use its purchasing power to procure renewable energy for its own operations? And so that can either be working with the utility to get a tariff or rates that include a higher percentage of renewables for the municipality, or looking to do independent power purchase agreements with projects that are either within the state or the region or even out of state through different contracting mechanisms. And then, of course, working with the utility. So there's, utilities are subject to usually both state and local regulations, and so it's important to look at what can the utility currently do to help the city meet its 100% goals, and would it need state approval, and partnering with the utility to understand sort of what their needs are to make sure that power is delivered in a safe and reliable and consistent way, and how you can help, and the city can help move the utility to have a greater percentage of renewables in its mix. So in terms of next steps around organizing capacity and resources and partnerships, so it's important to think about an implementation team, so energy managers, sustainability directors, other experts that you have within your networks, getting them involved to help implement the plan, collaborating with external partners and stakeholders, which is things that you're already doing and engaged on, and leveraging your city networks to figure out best practices and common strategies, and looking to see what other cities have done and what they're doing. And in my experience, so cities are looking to reduce soft costs. So there's, for solar PV and for other technologies, there's a program called SolSmart, where communities can receive designation for streamlining permitting and zoning and other processes for solar PV, but also for other technologies. Solarize campaigns are another program where you can create aggregated procurement or bulk procurement opportunities for technologies like electric vehicles and air source heat pumps and solar PV and solar hot water, where installers and retailers are usually willing to offer a group discount if you get a certain number of people to sign up to implement or develop either a solar project on their home, or buy an electric car, or buy a solar hot water system. And usually there's ways that you can get pretty significant discounts from installers. And so we've been helping communities go through the process of supporting those types of initiatives so that residents can transition to renewables. We've also worked with a number of municipalities, helping them do procurements, both for on-site renewables, what's available, what buildings can we put solar PV on. Solar is probably the most readily available of the renewable technologies at a small scale. And you can look at parking canopies, capped landfill spaces, private property, different places where solar PV would be appropriate, and then going through the procurement pathways to get more solar PV installed, both on local buildings and even outside of the area. And then cities are beginning to explore what are called virtual PPAs, where projects can be located in other states, and cities and many companies are taking the approach where they can enter into an agreement with those developers for their renewable projects and be able to sort of provide a hedge on electricity prices that way. So basically there's a number of different strategies, and in the limited time, I'm just sort of touching on a few that we've worked with some communities on as they take this sort of pathway towards 100% renewables. But there's a number of different strategies. The report I mentioned, I think, has over 30 different potential, places to begin. There's certainly, barriers, but as I mentioned, there's definitely some states have more enabling policies in place than others, but there's always something that communities can do, and I think it's an important sort of framing tool, that 100% goal, in terms of framing other initiatives and thinking about what helps us get to that goal versus just what types of policies don't. And then community members also play an important role, both external stakeholders and also residents, and setting that challenge for folks to help themselves become 100% renewable, as well as the city's operations. We found that it is often met with more success when the municipality can both look at its own local operations, as well as helping its residents move towards 100% as well. So that's probably heard enough of me talking, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Did any of the committee members have any questions?
That's right. I had to step out for a second. But just, if you guys would just go ahead and bring your next guest up. And I apologize, I had to step in the corner for a minute. Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, could I ask a quick question?
Oh, yes,
Okay, great, thank you.
absolutely.
I know you referenced PPAs, power purchase agreements, and I'm wondering if you could just explain that for the benefit of the committee, what those agreements are.
Sorry, could you restate the question? I had trouble. It sounded far away to me.
Can you hear me, Chad?
Yes.
Could you explain what a PPA is?
Oh, you bet. PPA, sorry, the energy world is filled with numerous shorthand and acronyms. Power purchase agreement, and so this is where a business or a homeowner or a municipality enters into an agreement to buy power from a private party, and you need states have to allow for third-party ownership, and it's generally not allowed in Missouri. But there are ways that you can work with a utility to have a power purchase agreement between say a wind project operator or a solar project operator, where you're able to lock in your electricity price, usually for a term of 20 years. And there's ways to do that either through a utility program that might allow it and be able to incorporate a renewable energy supply contract into the retail contract that you have with the utility, or there's ways to sign an independent agreement outside of the utility with a renewable energy generator to essentially lock in your electricity price from that renewable source for a fixed amount of time.
Did that answer that?
Yes, thank you.
Did anyone else on the committee have a question? I apologize.
Would the PPAs also include buying back power from individuals when they, overproduce what they can use with solar or wind energy?
Did you hear that,
So
Chad?
I think so. Does that also involve purchasing the excess of what people would use? So usually the framework that allows that is what's called net metering. And so that's if a person puts solar on their home, and when they're generating electricity at a time when they're not using it, that amount is tracked, and then the utility, you generally would credit that amount back to the person that they can apply it to a later bill. But generally, when you're looking to enter into a power purchase agreement, you would calculate how much electricity you're using, and then you would sign a contract that would only equal a certain percentage of your total usage, so that you wouldn't be committing yourself to buying more power than you need. So you may not buy the entire output from a wind project or a solar project, but just a portion of it to meet whatever amount of electricity usage you want to apply that to.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions
Yeah, you
from the
bet.
committee? Yes.
Yes,
I have a question.
Yes, I have a question. Within the industry and across the country, are we moving toward deregulation in which you can buy energy from, let's say, Seattle, for example? Or is it just a state issue?
I got the part about deregulation, but then I didn't get after that. Sorry.
He asked about, he asked about, are we moving to a place across the country where you can buy power from virtually anywhere, so it's being deregulated?
So there aren't too many states that are actively pursuing deregulation, meaning that you can go out and find a competitive retail supplier, but there are contracting methods that are opening up where you can sign those agreements outside of the sort of power delivery markets. And the technical term is called a virtual PPA, but we are seeing more and more people going to their utilities and asking them to help them create different products. So in the past, utilities were generally tasked with just providing, safe, reliable, and cheap electricity. But now folks are saying, yes, we would like all of those things, but we might be willing to pay a little bit more if you can give us renewable energy. And utilities across the country are working within the sort of that new framework, and that their customers are asking them to do more things than they have been asked to do in the past. And so in that sense, we have seen a number of utilities sort of wanting to work with their customers to try and provide a greater mix of renewables. And there are ways to structure those types of arrangements where the utility isn't losing out, and that the customer is benefiting.
Thank you.
If there's not another questions, yeah, we'll just move on.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, we're gonna move on, Chad. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, our next speaker is Reverend Roderick Burton with the new Northside Missionary Baptist Church. Reverend Burton is a faith leader in the African American community, advocating for environmental stewardship and environmental justice. Reverend Burton?
Good evening. I want to thank this committee for this opportunity, and also glad to see the smallest member of the community there enjoying the Cheerios. I'm coming on behalf of the faith community. I represent the St. Louis Metropolitan Clergy Coalition, Ecumenical Leadership Council, Pastoral Fellowships, on and on and on. But our concern is that this is an opportunity for St. Louis to be proactive with environmental justice. Too often you all have to deal with issues of reacting to problems. When we think about the Carter Carburetor site and other areas where in the past development has come at the cost of hurting impoverished and communities of color, this is an opportunity for St. Louis to develop energy and opportunities without having to harm anyone with renewable energy. It's very responsible. Also, this is an opportunity for, as you shape the policy, to be forward-thinking and intentional about including these communities who in the past, when there's been development, they've been left behind. And so there's other examples of cities who they're mapping out how they're going to be inclusive, so there's more training to communities where, they need, we have a crime problem. And part of the crime problem is people aren't working, and people aren't educated, and they don't have opportunities. And so as we transition to clean energy, this is a great opportunity to set aside and be intentional about including communities where they've been left behind and have many people who are able to work but don't have the opportunity. So I would just very strongly urge the committee, if 124 is adopted, as I believe it probably will be, but also to structure it in a way that is inclusive and that will prevent environmental disasters of the past and be very forward-thinking for the city of St. Louis and its residents for many, many decades to come. Thank you very much.
Well, hang on one second. Any questions for the Reverend?
I do. Thank you, Pastor. How long have you had renewable energy installed on the church grounds?
I believe it's been 2.5 years that we've had solar panels, I believe.
And talk to us a little bit about some of the success of that.
Well, we approached it in just pretty much more a pragmatic way. How can we save money? And in the, we work with one of the vendors who is here, Straight Up Solar, and it turned up I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how this was also an opportunity to help a fledgling industry incorporate people to get trained. So Straight Up Solar, who was our vendor, started having African Americans to be trained as installers. So during the course of that journey, I also went to the EPA's, might have been the first and the last environmental justice meeting that they had last July, and they talked about many cities such as ours, which had fossil fuel disasters and communities that are just recovering from them. And so this really made me excited about this Resolution 124 because we could develop and get the energy we need and then help some communities along the way.
What percentage have you seen as far as a decrease in your utility bills thanks to solar?
Well, we save $3,000 a year right now.
Wow.
And that's because we lease the panels. Once the lease is up, 40% of our electric bill is going to be gone. So I'm looking forward to that in 17 and a half years.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any other questions from members on the panel? I don't see it. Boss, are you looking for one? Or?
I just want to thank you for leading the way and thank you for coming to speak up on this. And also for bringing up the point of getting people into the workforce that right now they've been marginalized. They have not had an opportunity to develop those additional skills and apply them. So in this new industry, as we continue to grow into this in the city of St. Louis and across the nation, I think that's a nice opportunity to get people back retrained.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. God bless. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Burton. Our next speaker is Erin Noble. Erin is the Director of Business Operations at St. Louis-based Straight Up Solar. She's also a board member of MOSIA. MOSIA is the Missouri Solar Energy Industry Association. That's Missouri Solar Trade Association. Erin?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Been a St. Louis resident for 12 years, the same amount of time that I've been in the solar industry. So thrilled that we're here tonight. I appreciate your time and so incredibly passionate for this industry, and I'm really excited that our city is considering such a forward-looking resolution. So thank you. It's my task tonight in 5 minutes or so to give you a snapshot of what's happening for solar nationally as a state, and then try to use Straight Up Solar as a case study, as a St. Louis-based company that's installed about 1,000 systems here in St. Louis and on the Metro East Illinois side. So, next slide. Yeah. This is a really incredible slide that demonstrates why solar is in the news so often right now. It is an incredible story of the rapid transformation from a fossil fuel economy to a clean energy economy. So on the left, you can see that the price of solar in 1975 was $101 per watt. And you can see now in 2015, we're at 61 cents a watt, and in fact, it's even decreased significantly since then. So basically, the cost to install solar has decreased by 70% just since 2010. At the same time, as you can imagine, the cost of our traditional fossil fuels like coal continue to increase, the cost to transport and mine for coal. So the industry is booming, and you hear that over and over in the news today. At the other side of the slide, you see the blue, and that is the increase over the last 20 or so years of solar installations. So you're just on this steep climb that's increasing rapidly year over year. And why this is happening, if you could go to the next slide, please, Sarah. This is hard to read, I understand, but basically you can start to see the renewables are no longer just for the tree-hugging environmentalists. It is cost-effective to go green and embrace wind and solar and other clean energy sources. So you can see the first two lines there, wind and utility-scale solar PV, is now very cost-competitive with other more traditional forms of power. And this is looking better and better on the clean energy side every year. One thing that's interesting is that in 27 states, residential solar has reached grid parity. That's where the cost to go solar is equal to that of the fossil fuels that you used to have from your utility. And also in 2016, 40% of all new capacity on the grid was from solar. So across the country, 9 million homes are now powered from solar. So the transition's happening even faster than experts in the industry were expecting. This is a slide representing the growth in job creation as a result of solar. And as you'll see, this is sort of the story over at Straight Up Solar here in St. Louis as well. So even since 2015, just 1 year, from 2015 to 2016, there was a 25% increase in the solar workforce in the United States. So you're seeing this 20 to 25% routine growth year over year. And it's interesting, solar jobs are growing 78 times faster than the overall economy in 2016. So the transitioning is happening, and I'm just really excited for St. Louis to get on board with this resolution and start to continue to reap all the economic benefits that we're seeing in other parts of the country. So next, we'll just look briefly at what's going on in Missouri. So we do have a market and an industry here. It's not quite as big as California, of course, but we do have opportunities, and things like passing this resolution will help move the state forward. So currently, like Andy said, I do represent MOSIA tonight, the Solar Trade Association. So we have 33 solar companies across the state. We employ 22,380 people. We're currently 32nd state for solar jobs per capita. So there is a lot of room for opportunity and improvement, but it's not because the sun doesn't shine here. We do have good solar resource. We have to pass the policies that attract the market to the state. Things like was mentioned earlier, like the power purchase agreement and allowing for solar leases and things like that really drives the growth. This chart shows that there are solar jobs in all 50 states, but the yellow are the states that have the most solar jobs. And I just wanted to point out that Illinois is one of the top 5 states for solar right now, due to some really progressive solar and wind legislation that they passed a year or two ago. So they are doing big things, like Reverend Burton mentioned. They are investing heavily in solar training to help, they have a large population of coal miners there that no longer have work. So they're investing heavily in educating and retooling people that have been laid off in coal, or people who have been incarcerated, or people who are aged out of the foster care system, and providing training programs to help get them employed at companies like ours. So this is all very new in Illinois and exciting, as well as good state incentives and other things driving that market. So basically the paradigm is switching, and it's important that Missouri and St. Louis and other places take action that lures that clean energy investment here too. And I'll just close with a brief case study that shows a little bit about Straight Up Solar and how companies like ours drive economic growth and create jobs. So Straight Up Solar was founded in 2006. We have 1,000 systems installed throughout the region, and our vision is to inspire a solar tribe to create a sustainable world. So these are just a few of our solar installations, and this is our team of about 45 employees, and this is the pose that people do when they've gotten their solar installation. We take pictures of them harvesting the sun in front of their solar array. And it's really cool to see because people have been waiting for these solar panels for decades. And they're so excited to finally be out in front of their array with our electricians and our installers and get their picture taken and finally have their solar panels. So this was our team doing that stance as well. And I just wanted to briefly just describe all the types and backgrounds of people that we employ at Straight Up Solar. So laborers, electricians, marketing professionals, salespeople, engineers. There is a lot of variety of skill sets and backgrounds that you employ in renewable energy, and it could be a real driver for job creation here in the city as well. I have been a hiring manager there for a long time, and it's fun to be able to put people back to work that have been laid off in the housing recession or can no longer find work as an electrician, and to give them a good job with a good living wage, 401k, and health benefits and all the rest. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the companies that we've installed for. And here is just a snapshot of our larger installation map. You can see that there's a heavy concentration in the city. I live in Lafayette Square, and I know there's at least 10 residential systems down there, and maybe 8 or 10 businesses that have gone solar. So this is just to show the depth of interest in renewable energy. So, thank you.
So any questions from any members? Yes. Let me start with Jeffrey. That's seniority. We'll go down the list.
I am the king of questions.
I love it. Thank you.
But solar's always been a kind of a interesting subject for me. Spending a lot of time in the weatherization industry back in the early 90s. Couple of questions. So a typical house with about 2,000 square feet, to retrofit it with solar panels to generate its own energy, what are we talking about from a residential standpoint about how much money?
Sure. The nice thing about solar is that it can fit any budget because you can do 8 solar panels or you can do 40 solar panels depending on what you can afford. Personally, I put 20 solar panels on my flat roof down in the city. You could estimate maybe $3 a watt. So you're talking $15,000 or so, and that's about half of my energy bill. It's always tough to say what's your square footage and how does that work because everyone uses different amount of energy.
Right.
But my 20 solar panels offsets about half my bill, and you still get the federal tax credit, which is 30% of that $15,000. So that's a general starting point for you.
And using your example and your personal experiences, what's the payback in years?
Mm-hmm. I was probably at maybe a 5 or 6 year payback, but I did get the Ameren rebate. And maybe so it might have actually been shorter than that. I would say now clients without that rebate are perhaps at closer to 9 or 10 years, depending. There's a lot of factors at play. They do produce energy for about 20 to 25 years, depending, under warranty for 20. So there's definitely a significant payoff, and that's why the financing tools are so important, because you can get financing like PACE that help you basically pay almost what you would have paid in your utility bill for your solar instead.
Okay, second question. How do the elements affect the integrity of producing the energy? Snow, rain.
Yeah, so there is not much problems that you run into with dust or rain or snow. Typically, they're south-facing panels, so the sun's going to melt the snow right away. They don't require a lot of maintenance. Nowadays, everything's on your smartphone, so I can just go to my app, pull up my solar array and see how it's producing, and my company would be immediately notified if there's a problem, so the service team can look at it. So it's cool that in the last decade you have all this technology to track and see what your panels are producing day to day.
Thank you so much. No further questions.
Alderwoman Murphy, and then
Yeah, I was just curious, the panels themselves, are they manufactured here or abroad, for the most part?
There's both. We allow customers to sort of have their pick because we can source from either location.
And you say the maintenance on them is, like a lifespan of a furnace is what, 15, 20 years, maybe if you're lucky, or whatever, and so you're saying that's about the same for the panels?
Yeah, but the solar panels are warranted for 20 years, and they often produce energy for 25, 30. Yeah.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Great. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
What would you say are the biggest barriers to ramping up solar in St. Louis?
There are some important statewide policies that we need to fix and pass. We've been working on policy for solar and wind in Missouri for a very long time, and we've made progress. But as you can see from that orange fact sheet, we still don't have a very strong grade for some of our renewable energy policies. So net metering was mentioned earlier. That's getting paid for the energy that you're producing at the same rate that you're buying it from. So we did get that. We got that in 2009, but still it's counted monthly. And really you want that to happen annually because there's seasonal adjustments that happen, and you don't want, when you're overproducing because the sun's at its peak in the summer or spring, you want that to offset when it's not producing quite as much in the winter. So annual true-up is a really important thing. We're capped in Missouri at 100 kilowatts. That's not very big. So that's for a commercial-sized system, that's not very big. So we're trying to get that to 2 megawatts to catch up with the rest of the country. The leasing and the PPA is a huge deal. The IKEAs of the world want to put solar on the roof, but they right now have to go and get approval from Ameren directly instead of just having a way that the market's opened up and that we can, as a solar developer, interconnect systems without having to go through the PSC or through the utility. So there are some really smart, forward-thinking policies that the state needs to pass, and frankly, a lot of states have done it, and you see the solar industry flock because of it. So hopefully that helps. And of course, things like this, right, to signal the market that this is a pro-solar and wind city.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Bill Kincaid, and we have to dial him in by phone as well. Did you want to do it, Aaron, or Emily next? Okay, I'm sorry. We're not doing that. We're going to go directly to our last person here, then we'll dial in Bill Kincaid at the end. Our next speaker is Emily Andrews. Emily is the Executive Director of the U.S. Green Building Council, Missouri Gateway Chapter. Emily has been with the Gateway Chapter of U.S. Green Building Council for 11 years, and she has worked for environmental nonprofits her entire career. Emily?
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us here to talk about this really important issue for the city of St. Louis. I'm excited to talk about 100% renewable energy. But first, I want to talk about energy efficiency. That's what I'm here to talk about this evening. In the United States, residential and commercial buildings are responsible for about 45% of greenhouse gas emissions. In the city of St. Louis, that actually jumps to over 60%. And if you add industrial buildings, it goes to 80%. So for many, that statistic might seem a little overwhelming and depressing, but to me, it represents a huge opportunity. So the way to 100% renewable energy really starts with energy efficiency and energy conservation. Make the building as efficient as possible, use as little energy as you are comfortable with. We don't want people to be in the dark. And then add your renewable energy to the building. Many say that the cleanest energy is the energy that isn't used in the first place. And we also know that that's the cheapest energy as well. According to the EPA, the average building actually wastes 30% of the energy that it consumes just due to efficiencies. So, you know, you're talking about putting 20 solar panels on your house, and if 30% of your energy used is being wasted, it's like double waste, you know? So half of all energy savings can actually be achieved through no or low-cost changes. Small things like paying attention to how your building is being used and operated, turning out lights, using energy-saving, making sure your screen turns off on your computer, really small changes. Lots of things that people can do every day in their day-to-day lives. If you would go to the next slide. Energy efficiency and energy conservation save consumers money, and this is, what a lot of people care about, right? According to Energy Star, making energy efficiency upgrades on a home can save between 20 and 40% on energy costs. This can be installing a new heating and cooling system, updating your lighting with LEDs, or adding insulation. And if just 1 in every 10 homes were to upgrade to an Energy Star heating and cooling system, we could prevent 17 billion pounds of air pollution being emitted, and consumers would save $1 billion. This is significant. That's just 1 in 10, right? But if we all did it, it could be even better. Go ahead. And energy efficiency also, like solar, maintains and creates jobs. This is probably too hard to read, but a recent report came out from Clean Jobs Midwest and environmental entrepreneurs telling us that Missouri is home to over 55,000 clean energy jobs. And we added nearly 3,000 of those between 2015 and 2016. These are in the solar industry, in energy efficiency, people who are out doing energy audits, who are replacing lighting, who are replacing heating and cooling systems, different things like that. So clean energy really helps maintain the jobs that are already there, doing those things on a day-to-day basis, but it also helps grow those jobs as we start passing legislation like this and people start wanting to do more. So think of all the people who are out there, potentially installing new heating and cooling equipment, putting new windows in, doing tuck pointing, and think about the people who are potentially manufacturing some of those things, where, St. Louis is home to a high-efficiency heating and cooling system called Unico, that's in South St. Louis, in the 63111 zip code. They're making these systems that are being used all the time in energy-efficient upgrades. If you want to jump to the next slide. And energy efficiency is really already in action in St. Louis. There's a lot already going on. And you all probably know this. The city's Set the Pace program, the Property Assessed Clean Energy program, exists, and that's a way to finance energy efficiency and clean energy. And they've just added the opportunity for residential buildings to get that kind of financing. We also have the Home Energy Loan Program out of the Comptroller's Office that offers low-income interest loans for the same kind of improvements. And additionally, our utilities, Ameren and Spire, also offer energy efficiency incentives and rebates for both homeowners and businesses. Sarah, if you would jump. And then on the commercial end of things, I would be remiss if I did not mention this. The city recently passed its Building Energy Awareness Ordinance earlier this year in January, which requires buildings that are 50,000 square feet and more to track and report their energy and water use annually to the building division. And this is an effort to drive efficiency in large buildings because, as the saying goes, you can't manage what you don't measure. If you start measuring your energy and water use and tracking that and reporting that, you're probably going to do something about it. And hopefully that's making some energy efficiency improvements, that's considering solar, and that will hopefully drive the market as we start to see those buildings report their energy and water use. So it's, and this is really proven out with other cities that have passed this legislation, and there are about 20 plus of those. So through these initiatives and others, I think we're really poised to see energy efficiency and clean energy continue to grow in St. Louis, and I'm really excited that the Board of Aldermen has introduced this resolution. Thanks.
If you can hold for questions.
Sure, yes. I'm hearing a lot about the clean energy and solar, and that's certainly very important. But with the aging housing stock we have in the city of St. Louis, I'm not hearing enough about weatherizing homes. I heard, I wasn't sure if it was you or someone before you mentioned about weatherization or maybe blower doors or something like that. I know energy audits, I think is what was said. And energy audits encompasses insulation in your walls and your attics, weather stripping, furnace blanket, not furnace blankets, hot water heater blankets and so on and so forth. Where's the conversation on doing some of that, especially in the low-income community, so that they can save and we have this win-win?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, when I talk about energy efficiency, that's what I'm talking about, is getting your building as efficient as possible through weatherization, you know, sealing all those cracks and, you know, looking at your windows to make sure they're functioning properly. You may not need to replace them. You may just need to make a few repairs, adding insulation, and really making sure that the house is functioning properly before investing in expensive things like a new heating and cooling system or solar. And I think that that's really what I'm talking about with energy efficiency, is taking a look at that in a deeper way. And the programs that exist, the Urban League has the low-income weatherization program that's available to citizens in the city of St. Louis. There's an energy efficiency for all effort that's being led by the Natural Resources Defense Council and Renew Missouri and the Tower Grove Community Development Corporation. So there are people that are looking at those opportunities in low-income and affordable housing to make those buildings better. And that's a win-win, right? Because you're lowering people's utility bills and freeing up some of that money for other day-to-day needs.
Are you finding that our two utilities, Ameren and Laclede, are investing in rebates or any incentives to weatherize the home? Are they financing any retrofits?
They don't have a financing program per se, but they do have rebates and incentives for people to address that. Spire offers, formerly Laclede, some energy audit support. Ameren helps with a lot of, you know, there are a lot of different things. I mean, changing out your appliances. Your refrigerator is one of your largest energy-using appliances in your home, besides your heating and cooling. If you can replace that out, you know, you can get a rebate from them. Adding a programmable thermostat, different small things like that. So yeah, they're definitely supporting that, and I think they actually have a specific program called Community Savers that addresses the low-income affordable housing as well. And I think Ameren is getting ready to renegotiate, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, their incentive program for like the next 5 years. So there's an opportunity for the public to weigh in on that for sure.
Last question.
Sure.
Because there's talk about, well, I know I've personally found that a gas furnace is way more efficient and cost saving on your pocket than an electric furnace. But as I hear more and more about, you know, solar and the opportunity for, you know, better, clean, renewable energy, my mind is telling me potentially if you have solar panels and you're generating some of your own energy, then you could forego gas and maybe come back with the electric furnace, which takes a lot of power, and be more energy efficient. Do you find that's possible? Is my theory correct, or am I just too far out there?
No, I think that's possible. I think we did go through a phase of all electric, you know, electrifying homes like 100%, you know, that didn't have any gas. And I think, you know, you can see that trend happening in different places. But for a lot of people, I think it comes down to comfort and what works. I mean, your air conditioning is still using a ton of electric, so and that's when the sun is shining in the summertime. So there's a good fit to pair those two things up. So.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
No further questions.
Anybody else?
Any questions from? No, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Emily. So now our last speaker is Dr. Kincaid, and I will call him.
While you're dialing, does anyone, Alderwoman Murphy has to be added as a co-sponsor. Does anyone else?
Yes, Chairman, I'd like you to add my name to the bill, please.
Anybody else co-sponsors? Okay, so far everybody, and Navarro's on it, but I'll ask Scott. She's on there already, I think. Kennedy, oh, okay. So actually, the whole committee's going to be a co-sponsor, so. So Kennedy, please add Kennedy, Howard, Murphy, Boyd, and we'll ask Scott when he comes in. He's got the baby right now, but, and, well, Navarro's, she's already on there.
Yeah, she's already on.
So is Gunther, so, I mean, it's,
There's Scott.
well, Scott, do you want to be added as a, hey, Scott, you want to be added as a co-sponsor? Okay, that's right, Scott does not, but everybody but Scott.
I do too. I understand why.
You ready? Bill, can you hear us?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, hold on a second. So our last speaker is Dr. William Kincaid. Dr. Kincaid is a retired physician who is a past director of the City Health Department and the St. Louis Asthma Consortium. He also taught public health at St. Louis University School of Public Health and Social Justice. He recently moved to Washington, D.C., and he's still active with the Sierra Club, the American Public Health Association, and the American College of Physicians. Okay, Bill, I'm turning it over to you.
Great, thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all tonight. I've called this short presentation, Climate Change, What to Expect, and a subtitle, The Effect on Public Health and Safety. And having been at the health department for over 10 years, I take that challenge of public health and safety very seriously. And this is truly going to be a public health emergency if we don't deal with it, and I certainly applaud your efforts to get moving in that direction. This is a picture from 1801, which symbolizes one of the first changes in the Industrial Revolution. It's a picture of a factory burning coal, probably in some industrial process. But this was done long before we understood the effects of burning coal and the consequences that it presents to us currently. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, next slide, is made up of scientists that work with the United Nations and the World Health Organization. And they've discovered that over the last 30 years have been the warmest period in Earth's history over the last 1,400 years. So that's an amazing change over just a relatively short time. And the last 3 decades have been warmer, successively warmer, and the warmest since 1850. So these are serious issues that need to be dealt with. This slide probably won't show because it's a slide from the web, but it points to the changes in global temperature from 1850 to 2017. And basically what it shows is that there has been a 2-degree rise in the Earth's temperature over that period of time, which doesn't seem like much, but it has dire consequences for both sea life as well as weather changes, and we need to deal with that. The next slide shows a recent headline from the New York Times. It shows the EPA Director Pruitt announcing that the current administration is going to roll back the carbon emission rules that President Obama put in place. It clearly shows that this administration thinks that climate change is a hoax, and it is not. It is real. Next slide. Public perceptions on climate change actually show some good results. About 3/4 of the U.S. population thinks that climate change is happening, so it's not a hoax. 3/4 of the population says it's real. And 2/3 of the population thinks that at least human activity is partially responsible for that change. There is, as you might expect, a difference in outlook depending on your political party. But I think the numbers show that the public does, in general, take this seriously. Next slide. The same poll also shows that the public favors local governments getting involved in solving this problem. And having been in public health for the last 30 or 40 years, all these problems tend to be dealt with at a local level. Even if there's a national program, it's the local folks who are on the hook to make it happen and move things forward. So I think getting local governments involved in this is a terrific idea, and I certainly salute your effort in that regard. Next slide. So what to expect in the future? We're going to have more extreme weather, and we've certainly seen results of that over the last few weeks. 3 hurricanes and the fires in California are clearly issues. Rising sea level changes are predicted as well. Rising temperatures globally, which will create problems with droughts and famine in various areas. And increasing levels of CO2, which are going to cause even further problems because it's a greenhouse gas and the warming will continue. So cutting back on those CO2 levels is extremely important. So the public health challenges, air pollution is a big issue. We dealt with that at the health department a great deal. We're going to see changes in the way diseases spread, the vectors that spread these diseases, whether they're insects or animals. Their habitat is going to change as the environment changes, and that's going to produce some significant impacts on human disease. Water quality is going to change, and we're likely to have more algae blooms as that occurs. The warmer water will support algae growth, and that's going to create problems as well with our drinking water. So the hidden cost of coal is it's a killer. 13,000 people die in the U.S. every year because of burning coal. 670,000 people die in China. So it's a huge contributor to disease. It produces asthma, cardiovascular disease, nervous system diseases, and strokes. And it tends to affect those people that already have an illness. Children, elderly, and pregnant women are most affected. So dealing with this is important. Switching over to renewable energy is key. The coal produces a large number of particulates, and I'll talk in a little while about the effect that has on people that have asthma. The coal ash has heavy metals that are toxic to humans. So these are all issues that are made worse by ozone, particulates, and sulfur dioxide. A recent study has shown that there's enough wind energy over the oceans to power our human civilization if we can figure out ways to harness that energy. So switching over to renewable energies will cut down on sulfur dioxide, the particulates, ozone, and also cut back on carbon dioxide. So I want to say a little bit about asthma and the effect of coal burning and pollution on asthma. This is a picture of a human hair, and it shows the size of some of the particles that can get down into your lungs. Those big things down in the lower left-hand corner are fine grains of sand from the beach, but it's particles much smaller than that cause problems with the breathing. These ones that are 10 microns, which are 4 or 5 of them across, would make the same diameter as a human hair. And then there's ones even smaller than that. These are the ones that really get down deeply into the lung and cause a lot of irritation. That's the particulate matter is 2.5. So this is a cross-section of the lung. This is the trachea. It shows the breathing tubes that are in the lung that make up the airways that bring air in. The next slide is a picture of the bronchioles. These bronchioles branch many times and end up in little air sacs down in the lung. And if you look at an area that's about the thickness of a dime and make a small cube, there's 400 little air sacs down in there where the air exchange occurs in the lung. And the lung can be severely damaged by both particles, by sulfur dioxide, and by ozone, and by asthma triggers that will cause attacks to occur. Now again, this shows some of the next slide shows some of the changes that occur. It shows the breathing tubes and what happens to those tubes when you have asthma. The muscle wall tends to get larger, the glands get larger as well, and it encroaches on the airspace that you have. The next slide shows 3 cross-sections through the bronchioles. One is a normal bronchiole. The one in the middle is what asthma looks like when you don't have an attack. Once you have an attack, those muscle walls, again, tend to constrict. The glands become hypertrophied, and it narrows those breathing tubes to the point where you can't get air either in or out of the lung. And that's what causes an asthma attack and can cause severe problems, including death. So the next slide shows that some data on how asthma affects our healthcare system. There's 13.3 million visits to physicians and outpatient departments every year with asthma. And there's 440,000 admissions to hospitals for extended hospital stay, and the average stay is about 3.5 days. And asthma is the most common admitting diagnosis for Children's Hospital there in St. Louis. It's a very common health issue. Next slide shows what happens with fossil fuels and the longer-term public health challenges. Extreme heat, as I mentioned earlier, food and water supply are likely to be threatened. Degradation of our environment, which is going to cause people to migrate. Civil conflicts can result. A lot of mental health issues. and also some problems with severe weather and the impact that severe weather can have. The next slide is a diagrammatic kind of picture from the National Academies Press that shows how all these changes can occur in both allergens, water supply, food supply. So these are real issues that need to be dealt with, again, I think, at a local level. Some of the changes that we've seen over the past couple of weeks, as represented in the next few slides, this is the result of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, and it shows what happens to one of the local hospitals when they don't have electricity. They have to send up techs outside with portable energy in order to take care of people. So these are the challenges we're going to face if we don't deal effectively with the current problems that we have. Mental health problems are a big issue. The next slide shows a picture from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette showing a woman who's under incredible strain. She probably lost her home in Puerto Rico or family members. So mental health concerns are a big issue. And after all the emergencies that we had in St. Louis, whether the heat emergencies or the storm emergencies, we saw a lot of mental health problems as well following those events. The next slide shows what happens if you're short on water. Some of the people in Puerto Rico are actually going to Superfund sites that have contaminated water in order to get some water for use. Some of these things have, some of these water supplies have chemicals in them that should not be ingested. So it shows what dire straits people are pushed to in an emergency. The next shows a slide about a case report of, or a potential case report of a plague occurring in the Seychelles, which are some islands off of the African coast. This luckily turned out to be a false alarm. The results came in just yesterday that the 10 cases did not pan out. The next slide is a case from the New York Post, which shows what happened after Hurricane Harvey in Houston. They were actually, the power of the storm there and the huge onslaught of water that came up over the Houston area actually caused the Earth's crust to depress, and they lost about an inch in the height of the land that's surrounding the Houston area. So these problems are likely to occur in the future if we don't deal with these problems today. So even though the asthma problem is here and current, it's going to get worse if we don't deal with this problem in the future. Well, that's all I have. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We do have a question. Did you say you have one?
No.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
so we have no questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kincaid. This is Louis Reed. Miss you here in St. Louis.
Thanks, Bill. We're hanging up now.
All right. I think he's going. Any other speakers?
So do you have anybody that? Okay.
I'll just say a final thank you to all of you for taking the time on this evening to hear from everyone. And I know that there's a lot of people in this room with tons of expertise that would love to speak on this, so we were hoping to have a public hearing where everyone would get a chance to say a few words. We were hoping November 1st might work for the committee. We'll coordinate that. And if there's any other additional information you want as far as connecting with the speakers, we can help you connect with them.
I would say based off of, since almost everybody in the committee is a co-sponsor, it's going to pass out pretty easily. But we would welcome all the speakers that would want to speak. And if we don't run into the same problem, no hockey game, no concert, and if you know, the reason for the 6 o'clock start had to do with the parking, which if they were going to charge us, we could have started a little earlier. But anyway, but no, thank you all for coming out. That's really important, and I think you're on the right track. And I think when you do these resolutions, it'll start to set, you know, kind of a pace for doing legislation to follow up on the resolution that will actually be enforceable. So, but God bless, thank you. And any questions for? Oh, and Jeffrey does.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I stepped out the room. Are we voting on this tonight?
No, because a lot of the people here are here to speak, but we're not going to take public testimony till next meeting, which hopefully should be November 1st. And then it's good, I would have to believe it would pass out without any problem, since almost every member of the board is a co-sponsor.
Yeah, unless it's real dire that they provide testimony, I think we seem to agree with this process and what needs to happen.
Is Terry out? Scott's
Oh,
outside?
he's outside.
I mean, we could pass this out unless there's an objection from anybody out there.
I make a motion that,
We'll need Scott's right there. Hey, Scott?
You guys up?
Are you guys
And
fine?
we can still set that up. We can
No, he-
still set that up if you would.
He won't put his name, but
Everybody okay with that?
it won't matter, yeah.
All right,
We
let's
have a
go,
quorum.
let's
If
go.
you're fine, we'll move this to the,
Let's go.
and it can't be added to the agenda tomorrow only because of the 24-hour rule.
Yeah, but we'll
But
be next
it would
week.
be then,
next Friday.
next Friday, brought out to the full board then.
Yeah, and then we can set up media and
Oh, is it?
everything and have an opportunity for people to speak.
Oh, and you know what? I'm learning as I go, and from, like, people that actually know what they're doing. So it's already in committee, and we can ask to suspend the rules tomorrow. So
Yeah.
my understanding is we can do something tomorrow.
But I would wait a week because
Okay.
that gives them a chance to still get what they need. And then-
Okay.
So we'll pass it out next Friday.
So that's fine. So we do have a motion.
I would like to make a motion to
I'd like to
pass
second it.
Board
We have
Bill
a second.
124.
Madam Clerk, would you
committee.
please call the roll?
Alderman Kennedy,
with the
Alderman
due counsel.
Conway, Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderwoman Navarro, Chairman Vaccaro,
Aye.
President Reed,
Aye.
6 aye votes.
So it does pass. So it,
Congratulations, everybody. I want to say one
oh,
thing.
yeah, boss, you got something?
Yeah,
that we
I just
can-
want to really thank the speakers, Sarah, Andy, Reverend Burton, Aaron, straight up. I love that name, by the way, and Emily, thank you all for speaking tonight. And for everybody here who hasn't spoken tonight and who has come out, understand that your presence here makes the difference. It really makes a difference in how the legislators and everybody sees the effort and says, okay, this is important to people, and this is why we need to support it and get it moving. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. I was telling Scott earlier, John Maxwell, my son, was the same age as him, his daughter, when sitting in John's living room and hanging out and working on things like this. So I just want to really thank each and every one of you. This is going to change St. Louis, and it brings St. Louis up, and I'm telling you, it is amazing. So I just want to give all you a big hug and big round of applause. Thank you so much for coming out. Directly after the meeting, why don't we go down to the steps right in the rotunda and get some photos before everybody leaves?
Motion
Would
to
you like to
adjourn.
move to adjourn?
So we are adjourned.
Okay.